I said you have to go through it. The good, the bad. You can't really skip steps in this whole coffee game. But there are some things that are my shining light, the things that I just do. And to an extent, for you too, this is more so a case for structure when it's good and also when it doesn't really work for you. There's been many times in the walk of coffee that I constantly think about when I'm doing something that's outside the norm or that is of the norm. And it's one of those things to where I have to always kind of second guess myself. The way I look at things is that structure is extremely important in the way that we do things with coffee, with life, with routines and all that. And especially when we start to learn new things, things that we are not accustomed to, things that we're not, at least for now, not experts in, we tend to lean on others. We tend to lean on books, and we let that be our shining, guiding, and at times, our crippling light. I'm no different than you. When I first started drinking coffee, I just wanted to have a simple recipe, right? Something that gave me a sense of like, I'm doing this right. And I had that recipe and I started to use it. Then I started to listen to different people, kind of get their opinions of things. And I've talked about it many times is that what you don't know about a particular recipe is probably sometimes the detriment of the things that you're really trying to do and trying to understand. A lot of times we still don't know who we are in this whole coffee thing. And one of the things that I try to do as much as I can whenever I try to get into new things is to, of course, listen to people. For instance, when I first started to barbecue, I went to one of the top 50 restaurants, right? They had a YouTube channel and they were talking about how you would make this meat, this brisket, so to speak. So I wrote everything down, watched the video a couple of times, went to the store, selected the brisket, trimmed it the way that they did for the most part. I'm sure I messed up many times. And then I did everything the same. And then when I had that bite of brisket, it was okay. It was fine. Did it look like theirs? Probably not. Was it theirs? No, not at all. Those are some of the things that I started to realize a little bit later. I started to realize that they were using prime grade brisket. I knew that they were using a different type of smoker. I started to realize that they had so much experience, so there's some things that they not purposely left out. Then it took me going through that whole journey, that whole thing for myself to realize that I couldn't do exactly the same thing that they were doing. It's no different than coffee. I will listen to that person who was talking about this particular ratio, and then I would do that. And then I'll be mad at them or the coffee or myself that I couldn't get the exact same taste and flavors as what they were talking about. One, of course, realizing this later, which should have been obvious, is that they were using a different coffee. They're coming from it from a different point of view. They're coming from it from a different water chemistry. Things that they do like, things that they don't like, and all that good stuff. And I didn't realize that I was taking all of that in. So as we go throughout this journey, we realize that we have guardrails. And guardrails are good. We need structure, right? It's one of those things to where we know that we have structure in life, but sometimes, especially when we start to do another hobby or different hobby or something that we're not too accustomed to, we forget that we do have those guardrails. And I'm not saying that you don't need all this information from other people. It's a starting place in the beginning, right? You start to do this swirl. You start to do 30, 45-second blooms. Then really realize why you're doing them. But it gave you a sense of like understanding. It gave you a sense of like you're doing something right. But then after a while, you start to figure out the things that you do like, things that you don't do that the experts say not to do. You start to realize which coffees that really gravitate to you. You start to come to this realization that it's okay to do things differently. Or you probably got a piece of gadget that has helped your coffee game a lot more. And now your structure, your scaffold, your skeleton is built through your own inputs, but also through others. So that's the case for structure. It centers you. It gets you prepared for doing this thing each and every day. It kind of gets you out of your head to an extent. You're just doing that recipe. You're doing that technique. You're just trying to see if you can replicate something that's magical, right? Something that's drinkable, something that you know that you can actually do all the time. But I'll tell you this for free, is that it's going to get to the point where you want to break free, either realizing it or not. You're going to start wanting to do things a little bit differently. You want to try a different recipe, different technique, different pouring structure, different water chemistry, different temperature in the kettle, different beans for that matter. And then you're going to start second guessing yourself because that guru told you that this is the way they do things. And then you're wondering if you should step out of your comfort zone and try something different. You should. You shouldn't force coffee to have a way of what others think that it is, right? You should just let coffee be what it is. And I think that's the biggest thing in all of this. We need to define our own guardrails. We need to define what we like, what we don't like. And then eventually, I think what's going to happen is that we're going to start to come up with our own recipes, our own way of doing things. I want to leave you off with this. I made a particular coffee like last week, and I was doing some type of little experiment for myself and eventually for you too. And I don't remember the actual recipe, but I told people what the recipe was. And then I asked the question, how do you actually make your cup of coffee? And people were flooding in, asking questions. Answering the question. They're telling me that they do this and do that. They do this for a cold bloom to get a little bit more sweetness out of the coffee. Some person's like, okay, I do like a 30 gram bloom. Then I get to 100 grams. Then after that, every time it's about 50 grams until I get it to 250 grams of water. It's fascinating. It's all different. And I'm sure throughout the time that they're coming up with these recipes and different ways of doing things, they did follow somebody else. They did get an idea from somebody else to try it this way, try it that way. But the way that they were talking about it, they were owning the whole situation. They had protocols for this coffee, for a new bag of coffee, and what they wanted to get out of it. It was fascinating because what it taught me is that we're all different. We have our own ways and structures of doing things. And throughout time, throughout our experience of getting better, not getting better, getting frustrated, and all that stuff, we are building this skeleton and we're filling it up with meat, like for a better analogy. Yes, at the time, it may get a little rigid. We may get too in our ways and all that stuff. But I guess really the point here is that we're developing our own recipes, our own ways of doing things because of the way we like to do it. That's what structure does for us. And when we get away from following and constantly wondering why this person did whatever they did or just take it as gospel, that's where we fall flat. That's where we have issues because not necessarily that the recipe is bad, but we're not trusting ourselves. We're not seeing it for what it is. And as long as we start to come out that shell and be more so who we are, and we figure out the reasons why we do what we do, our structure is going to be solid. Our walk, our foundation, our journey with coffee will be our own. That's the beauty of all of this. So that's all I'm saying. When the case for structure really does work. I do want to leave you off with this. The thing about structure is that it shapes by your own experience and others. But don't let others take over your structure. That's what we're working with right now. Those are the things that we have to realize and have a cautionary tale of like, okay, we can do this. We have to do it our way. Let me know what you think. What's your recipe? What's your go-to? Why? Did you develop it over time? Or is it a modification from one of the other peoples that you listen to? Do you question it ever? Do you try to get out the box of trying a different coffee for whatever reason that you're trying it? What is it? Talk to you later. Bye.